Tonight, I'm going to dig 100 holes on the beach in the dark and find out what kind of bizarre creatures are hiding here. For that, I brought these gloves, this shovel, and a flashlight that I really hope doesn't die halfway through. I'm on a beach in Rio de Janeiro, pitch black. No people anywhere, just me, the ocean, and whatever might be buried under this sand. I dug the first hole in the wet sand. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was clear this mission was going to be long, so I covered the hole and kept going. I walked, and walked a little more. On the third hole, I finally found something. Small, triangular, almost invisible. At first, it looked like just a tiny white shell, but this little thing was alive. This is a Donax, one of the fastest creatures on the entire beach. Nothing here digs faster. It lives exactly where the waves break, constantly tossed around by the tide. Each wave drags it, and the next wave buries it again. And the wildest part, it has no eyes and no brain, yet it can feel every vibration in the sand and senses a wave coming before it even touches it. Small, simple, but a pillar of life on the shore. Fish, birds, and crabs rely on it every single day. One of the most discreet beings on the coastline, and probably the most impressive creature you never realized you were stepping on. After hole number 8, I was exploring near some rocks when I saw something darting around in the shallow water. Not a fish, not an insect, something transparent, almost invisible. I got closer and finally saw it. An amphipod, the famous sand flea. It looks like a tiny folded shrimp, living exactly where waves explode onto the shore. Basically the most chaotic zone of the entire beach. Every wave drags it, exposes it, and buries it, and somehow it dominates the place like it was born from chaos itself. When it moves, your eyes can't keep up. It curls its body and launches itself like it has a spring inside. It's so fast that for a second, it looks like it vanishes into the sand. And the craziest part, there are millions of them here. They clean the beach, filter organic debris, and become food for fish, birds, and crabs. Too tiny for us to notice, but absolutely essential. If one day you're walking by the shore and see something flashing in the water right before a wave hits, it's them, the invisible sprinters of the tide. I walked a little more, and at hole 17 near the rock, life suddenly looked completely different. The stones were full of hidden creatures, and that's when I jumped a bit. Something ran extremely fast. When my flashlight locked onto it, I thought, okay, that's actually kind of adorable. This is Ligia oceanica, the sea woodlouse, and this creature literally lives between two worlds. It can't stay underwater for long, it drowns, but it also can't stay out for long, it dries out. Ligia survives in a strip just a few centimeters wide between land and sea, a place so hostile that almost nothing manages to live there, and yet she rules that zone. She breathes through gills just like shrimp, but here's the insane part. She doesn't breathe underwater, she breathes air. However, her gills must stay wet, so she sprints across damp rocks catching wave spray, inhaling the mist like she's recharging every time she gets wet. And running? She's a master. She bolts, changes direction instantly, and disappears into cracks before your brain even processes what happened. Huge eyes, crazy peripheral vision, and she notices your flashlight the exact second you aim it. She's basically a reflex machine. She also recycles the coastline naturally, eating algae, organic debris, tiny animals, keeping everything clean. And she's ancient, older than the dinosaurs, one of the most successful evolutionary designs ever created. 12 holes later, hole 29, something finally made me smile. A marine snail, and not just any snail, an Astrea snail. One of the most incredible creatures hiding along the shore. It looks slow, peaceful, maybe even cute, but the Astrea is basically a biological tank. Let's start with the wildest detail. It literally eats rock. Yes, it scrapes algae and the rock beneath it, swallowing microscopic bits of calcium and silica. It uses a surreal tool, a saw tongue with thousands of micro teeth. Its radula is so unbelievably tough that engineers study it when creating advanced materials. And it moves. It's like it's sanding the underwater world. Without meaning to, it sculpts the coastline while eating. Its shell is a masterpiece, pure evolutionary engineering. Triangular shape for wave impact, serrated edges that absorb force, even turbulence that helps it breathe better. Over time, the shell becomes a living garden. Coralline algae, sponges, tiny barnacles, an entire ecosystem hitchhiking on its back. And despite being marine, it's a low-tide survivor. Seals itself shut, retains moisture for hours, slows down its breathing. And when you see an Astrea sitting still, it's not dead. It's conserving energy like a pro. Its big weakness? If it falls on its back, it might not flip over. Under the sun, that can be fatal. A creature that can survive waves, rocks, predators, but not a clumsy tumble. It even has a primitive biological GPS, detecting light, vibration, moisture, and the slope of rock, and usually choosing the safest path. Even octopuses, smart predators, often give up. They try to pull the Astrea off, but it clamps down like an armored door and hides in impossible cracks. All of this in a creature that can live for 10 plus years. Finding an Astrea is like finding a living piece of natural perfection. An engineer, sculptor, and janitor of the shoreline, keeping everything running in silence. A bit higher on the rocks, I got even happier. Only when the flashlight hit from another angle I saw it. A perfectly camouflaged crab, frozen, watching me. In that classic crab vibe, like, you done staring yet? A simple moment, but it felt like finding a natural aquarium hiding in plain sight. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a crab sprinted straight at me. I scooped it with the shovel and it just stared at me. So, we cool? Or do we need to use the claws? I picked it up and, to my shock, it froze, completely still, like a tiny statue having an anxiety attack. Put it on the ground, nothing. Tapped it with my finger, still nothing. And then, out of nowhere, it blasted off like a rocket. A classic survival move. Play dead, keep playing dead, now go. Nature never disappoints, just like this channel, which never disappoints its subscribers. So subscribe for more amazing aquatic creature videos. Right after that, the camouflaged crab from earlier finally came out for real. It was eating something on the rock, and I could clearly see a Pachygrapsis transversus. This creature is built for chaos. It lives where almost nothing else wants to live. Violent waves, slippery rocks, unpredictable tides. Its body is flattened, perfect for squeezing into cracks before water hits. And impressively, it can breathe underwater and hold air for hours, like a DIY amphibian. Those bulging eyes, nearly 360-degree vision. It sees you even when it pretends it doesn't. That's why it just stares at you like it's pretending to mind its own business. It eats anything: algae, fish scraps, mollusks, zooplankton, even cookie crumbs left by careless humans. When threatened, it activates a 3-step defense. Claws up, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Freeze completely, then zigzag away into a crack. A move so effective, even predators get confused. Its larvae drift for hundreds of kilometers until they find a rocky shore to call home. They treat cracks like little apartments. A tiny creature with a life straight out of a survival documentary. I dug more holes, nothing. Hole 50, 60, 90. The entire beach felt like it went into airplane mode. So I tried another beach nearby. Arrived excited, and guess what? Nothing. Not even a hint of life. Then I saw a lagoon on the map. Seemed like a good idea, or maybe a terrible one. Walked into a silent, pitch-black path. Suddenly a car approached slowly, and for a second I thought, yeah, this is where I die. I got genuinely scared, so I did the logical thing. Ran back to my car and drove past it. If something goes wrong, I'd rather be running in a car than on foot. I reached the lagoon. Total silence. No lights, no people, just me, the mosquitoes, and darkness. The last hole of the night. Deep breath. Dug, and nothing. Absolutely nothing. Sometimes nature gives you incredible moments. Other times, it looks you right in the soul and says, "Not tonight, my friend."